Picture a land so rich, so fertile, it fed an entire empire. Ukraine was called the breadbasket of the world, and every word of that was true. And for generations, Ukrainians had worked this black soil with their own hands. But in Moscow a man was watching, and he had very different plans. His name was Joseph Stalin, and he saw Ukraine not as a people, but as a problem. In 1929, he unleashed collectivization, and it moved with the force of an invasion. Soviet brigades arrived in villages across Ukraine, and they took everything. Grain hidden in cellars, seeds saved for spring, all of it seized. The quotas demanded were impossible, and that impossibility was the point. Wagons full of Ukrainian grain rolled east, while Ukrainians had nothing left to eat. Winter arrived, and with it, the silence of empty shelves and dying fires. In December 1932, Stalin went further. He sealed the borders. No Ukrainian could leave. Ukraine had become a sealed death trap. Soviet propaganda declared, "Everything is fine. The workers are happy." But the truth was visible on every street, in every doorway if anyone dared to look. By early 1933, Ukrainians were dying at a rate of 25,000 every single day. And through it all, the bureaucracy never stopped. The paperwork of death continued. Even as Ukrainians died, Soviet trains carried their grain to foreign ports. Mothers boiled leather, bark, grass, anything to keep their children alive one more day. Hiding even a handful of grain became an act of desperate courage. But one man saw the truth and refused to look away. Gareth Jones, a Welsh journalist, walked into the famine zone alone. While others reported Soviet lies, Jones wrote the truth and paid for it. Two worlds existed simultaneously, the world of the killers and the world of the dying. They even took the churches, because Ukrainian identity had to be erased completely. At its peak, the famine was killing an entire village every hour. Some wrote down their names, as if paper could hold them here a little longer. The soldiers followed orders, and some of them knew exactly what those orders meant. And still, in freezing classrooms, teachers taught Ukrainian because memory is resistance. Today, more than 30 nations officially recognize the Holodomor as genocide, and the number grows. Even in the darkness they sang because a nation cannot be silenced completely. 2 years earlier, a living village. Now, silence and snow. The same street, a different world. Stalin signed his name, and thousands more died. They called it theft. Carrying 5 stalks of grain meant death. They called survival a crime. By some estimates, 7 million Ukrainians were dead, most of them in 12 months. The Soviet press called it a lie. They said there was no famine. They'd always say that. Ukrainian Canadians marched in the cold. The world barely noticed. When the famine ended, Ukraine had been broken but not destroyed. They sent Russian settlers to fill the emptied villages, the engineering of ethnic erasure. Today, at the memorial in Kyiv, candles burn because some debts can only be paid in light. These were not statistics. They were people. Farmers, teachers, mothers, children, people. The truth was buried, but the truth is stubborn. It always finds a way back. Ukraine's grain fed Stalin's factories. The people paid with their lives. They taught the old language in secret, because identity cannot be starved to death. A single child walking across an empty steppe that is the image of a nation nearly erased. First, they destroyed the best farmers. Then they demanded the impossible harvest. 60 years later, a woman sat before a camera and finally told the world what she had seen. Taking 5 stalks of grain carried a death sentence. This was not a famine. This was policy. Ukraine had always fought for its independence. Stalin understood that, and feared it. Some risked everything to document the truth, and because of them, we know. They were forced to work even as they starved, because even dying, Ukraine had to serve. One father walked miles through a blizzard for a handful of food and found almost nothing. Ordinary men executed an extraordinary crime because they followed orders and said nothing. Certain regions lost half their population in a single spring. She was 12 years old, and she was the last one alive in her family. She sang to stay sane. Soviet ships loaded Ukrainian grain in Odessa harbor and sailed it to foreign markets. They killed the writers, the poets, the professors. Culture was as dangerous as grain. The money from Ukrainian grain bought the machinery of Soviet industry, every ruble stained. When it was over, they arrived with cameras and bread, and called it Soviet generosity. 7 million. Their names must be spoken because silence is its own kind of murder. In 1991, Ukraine declared independence, the answer to 1933 written in history at last. Nation by nation, the world begins to say the word genocide. It took decades for the West to understand what had happened, and some still refuse. Today, the museum holds the evidence, every document and accusation, every artifact, a life. The same black soil still grows wheat. The same land that witnessed murder grows life. When the Soviet archives opened, historians found the proof. The proof was always there. The Genocide Convention defines it. The Holodomor meets every criterion. From Toronto to Melbourne, Ukrainians light candles every November across 90 years of grief. In 2022, the war returned. The world finally understood. This was never finished. A girl in a Kyiv classroom reads about 1933, and the chain of memory continues. She was over 100 years old when they photographed her. Her eyes held everything. The sunflower grows back. It always grows back. That is the Ukrainian answer to death. Stalin died in 1953 in his bed, not in a field. History's justice is slow. The Holodomor was not unique in human history, but it was uniquely deliberate. The bandera still plays. The old songs still carry the dead home. Some governments still deny it. The argument continues. The truth does not change. Ukrainian children play in Kyiv today, and that is the ultimate defeat of Stalin's plan. The Dnieper River ran through it all, and still runs. Ancient, indifferent, enduring, the wheat grows the same. But you will never look at it the same way again. 7 million people were deliberately starved to death, and the world looked away. So the question is this: when a government uses hunger as a weapon against its own people, what is our duty, and are we watching closely enough right now?